Say It Loud Network and Mino Lion Media presents Business First.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Business First with Sonia Alleyne. I am your host, and this is the second part of a discussion with Don Clark. In case you missed it last week, Don is the president and chairman of Asset-Based Lending Consultants, a global commercial and asset-based lending company. He also runs Don Clark Enterprises, the training arm of his company. And he and his family are also about to open their first of several UPS stores in Florida. Last week, Don and his daughter Simone shared inspiring and moving stories about what it's really like to be in an entrepreneurial family. Don, his wife, their 3 children, and his son-in-law are all employed by the family businesses. In fact, the members of Don's family have not collected a paycheck outside of the family businesses in over 25 years. Don explained last week that he is building a family dynasty and encourages everyone entering into business to think just that big. But in order to do that, there are a couple of things that we've got to put in place to make sure that you can. And so in part 2 of our discussion, Don is here to talk about how to build a solid financial foundation for your business in order to successfully grow and thrive. So welcome back, Don. Good to have you always.
Sonia, thank you. So good to be here with you, and to the audience, thank you for listening to us one more week. I'm happy to be here and share what I can. It's a pleasure.
And it's always great stuff. What I wanted to start out this week was to talk about, like, what is the benefit of entrepreneurship, not just for an individual, or, I mean, we can talk about what it is for an individual, but why it's important even for the community at large.
Well, so entrepreneurship, and let's talk about entrepreneurship for a little bit. The dictionary says it's starting a business or an organization to add wealth, or to give a business venture to a person, for example. So entrepreneurship is uniquely personal. It's somebody starting a business. Now, entrepreneurship does a couple of things. One, it allows the entrepreneur to work at their own pace, to be their own boss, to pay themselves their own money, and to create their own economic paradigm. Okay. And also to hire people, like in the case of me, Sonia. I've got a whole family working here with me in these business segments. And so that's it, and look, so can I say this? And I'm going to talk to the African American community in particular. Most of us, all our lives, have been raised to go to school, go get a degree, and go work for a big firm. It's called a job. And somebody said, well, a job is just over broke. It's hard to get rich and build wealth working for the other guy, because the other guy's trying to build wealth for himself. Right. He's not going to share his wealth with you. He's going to pay you a salary, which he thinks is reasonable. Entrepreneurship and starting your own business opens all kinds of opportunities for you. I mean, it's not that easy, but it's not that difficult either, if you're willing to follow some of the things we're going to talk about tonight as to how to start your business. So yes, to create opportunities for you to grow, to build a business, to hire your family, to enhance your lifestyle, to build wealth. That's what entrepreneurship is all about. Yes. And hire people. Good.
And to hire people. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So, one of the things you said, it's not that easy, but it's not that difficult. And I think that that's where even maybe some of the fear comes in for people to want to start their own businesses. Because the one thing you do have with a job is that, while you're working, because you could easily be either let go or dismissed or fired or laid off. But it's that guaranteed paycheck.
Paycheck, right.
So what scares people about going off is where does this money come from? Like, how do you, begin to forget about even paying anybody else? Like, how am I going to be able to sustain myself
right
as I'm getting ready to launch a business?
Right. And that's an important thing to think about, because if you're starting your business, you have to bear in mind that maybe for, 6 months to a year, maybe you can't take a salary, because you're building the business. And while you're building it, you can't be taking the money out. You need to reserve some liquidity to grow the business. It's seed money where you replant it into the business. So, in my business, when I first started, for the first 3 or 4 months, we couldn't take a salary. We had a little bit of some severance from my old job, and I cashed in my old retirement plan, and I had about $40,000. That was, almost 40 years ago. And we had to live off that, but that soon finished. While we're building a business, while we're paying rent, and paying telephone bills, while we're doing traveling to meet people, we had no income coming in immediately, but we were building up a customer base and building up our profile. So it took a while. So, you really got to plan, Sonia, how you do it. You should have some kind of a cushion to start off with. Mm-hmm. All right. And we'll talk later on tonight about the different ways to raise money from people or from even family members who are willing to invest money into you to help you could pay them back. But you need something to start on. And you're right. Most people are reluctant to start their own businesses because they worry about getting that paycheck on time. But again, no risk, no reward. Risk and rewards are commensurate. I gave up a job that was paying me in 1986, $50,000 a year. That's a lot of money now, even now. Stock options and bonuses. That was probably, my total package was about $70,000. And I walked away from that. That was, almost 40 years ago. A lot to walk away from. But I had a bigger vision in mind. And it's a good thing I did that because the bank I worked for folded up a couple of years later, and whammo, I'd have been out of a job.
You would have been out of,
Yeah, you go. So you can play it safe and stay where you are. You can say, listen, and entrepreneur, you have to have that hunger within you that you want to do it. It's not just, hey, well, I'm going to do this thing because it sounds good. You really have to believe in yourself and that you can make it work and be willing to work hard at it. And we'll talk about some of the things you should be doing.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about, you just mentioned having a strategic plan. So, when we talked offline, you were saying that there were, 3 things that make businesses either succeed or fail. And that's, number one on that is the strategic planning. So I think people, again, intellectually understand that, yes, I should have a plan. But what does strategic planning really look like for someone starting a business who may not even know, like, you know where you want to start, but you have no idea sometimes where you want to go. And so how does strategic planning start to look for someone who's just venturing out?
Well, look, so the first thing I think about, and I teach this all over, is you're going to start a business. Who is going to be your consumer? Who's going to be your customer? Where are they? You have to map out who's going to be the consumer or the user of the product you're offering, and how do I get close to them? Okay, so for example, and this probably is a strange way to say, but putting a kosher deli in a black neighborhood might sound innovative, but it probably won't work because most folks don't have kosher delis in a black neighborhood. So you have to be strategic as to where you put your business, who your clients are going to be, and what you're offering. Is there a need for the product? Is there a need? If I have this product, if I have this service to offer, who will be the consumers? And how do I reach those people? So market study, one thing, to be strategic. Do a market study. You can do it yourself. Find out, the demographics of the community you're going to operate your business in. If it's a business where they're coming to your shop, what is the demographic breakdown of the people in the immediate community around you? If you're offering a product online, it's a different story because the world is your oyster. So you have to have a business plan. What do you envision doing the first month, first year, the first 2 years? How much do you envision selling, or how much revenues do you envision having? Will you need that staff? Do you need an office? Do you need, it's so many things that are involved. And I tell people the first thing to do is sit down, come up with a business concept, make sure it makes economic sense, make sure it's going to be strategically located where it can attract. For example, when I owned my appliance stores, and I told you about those that failed, I had my appliance stores in major shopping areas where foot traffic was created from other businesses. Like, for example, the UPS store we're putting in place, closing on next month, is in a shopping plaza where Publix, which is a big supermarket, is, and other businesses. So there's foot traffic that's coming through that shopping area, and those I will feed off the foot traffic of the other stores. So, it's all about strategically play. You don't even really know where. You want to be where a retail business where you're going to attract people who are going to walk in or come in to see your businesses and maybe feed off other businesses in your space. So all that, the logistics of it, the business planning, I think it's important to make sure you have enough money to project revenues and expenses and to see whether or not you can make this thing work. Okay. And you'll have to get professionals along the way. You can't be a jack of all trades. I would suggest that you get at the onset, you get a good CPA or a business planner to write a business for you, business plan. When entrepreneur conceptualize, the entrepreneur comes up with the idea, the entrepreneur comes up with what he or she wants to do, then you turn to professionals. You can't be all things. In my space, I'm a financial consultant. I'm a banker. I teach continuing education and finance. So it's kind of easy for me to work the financial parts of it. But if you don't know it, go find somebody to help you. A good attorney is important. A good attorney will help you get, organized, and all those things that you need to do. Is your name taken? What is the name you're going to use? Is that name taken? You have to search. You can't take somebody else's name. Are you going to copyright your name? Is it product? Are you going to license the product? I mean, there's so many things, Sonia, that goes into it that you could see. You have to start off gradually and build this plan to make.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the process alone sounds overwhelming, right? Like, I mean, even thinking about a business plan sometimes can just be really overwhelming. But what you're saying is to enlist the support of professionals who may be able to help you. And the other good thing too is that there's so many resources online as well. So they're business plan templates you can look at as well, to help you do that. The other thing you talked about was having consistent effort, which is, I think, probably where a lot of people fail. I actually worked for someone who said, successful people operate at a high level consistently over time. And it's that consistent part that I think is the tricky part for most of us, huh?
People think, well, I own my own business. I'm going to take 6 vacations a year and I'm going to be gone for 3 months. And no, it doesn't work. I've been in business for almost 40 years. I work literally. I'm available to my customers 24 hours a day. I don't want someone to call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't make me happy. But if they call me, I'm going to take the call. Employers will say, well, it's 9 to 5. It's 5 o'clock. I'm going home. 5 o'clock, my day's just beginning. I'm available to my clients. I'm doing what I have to do. So there's no substitute, Sonia, for hard work and consistency, doing the same thing. As long as it's successful, you got to stick with it through thick and thin. There's sometimes, I remember when I first started my business, I'll tell you a quick story, is that, money we had, we ran out of it and nothing was coming in. And our house was guaranteed by FHA, and we were 3 months behind the mortgage. And my wife and my 3 kids, and I started thinking, well, did I do the right thing? The thought of going back to another job was never in play.
Wow. Okay.
It was never. It was tough, but maybe it was just pride. I didn't want to go back to people and say, look, you're a failure or whatever. But I knew I could make this thing work. So going back, and even when the money was gone and there was nothing left and we were scratching to put 2 cents together, I stuck with it. Consistently calling people, consistently making phone calls, consistently knocking on doors, having doors shut in my face. Some of the times people didn't think, what is this guy doing? His strange accent, he wants to come in and do this for us. No, we haven't done this before. We don't know him. But I kept on banging. I kept on knocking on that door.
Yeah. And what was that really like? Because, when the money has run out, right? And we've all heard stories. I mean, entrepreneurs have lost marriages,
yes,
and homes and families. Fortunately, your wife was with you, but that's when the money has run out. Like, that's usually when, somebody's looking at somebody cross-eyed saying, what's going on here? What are we going to do? And so what is it that really makes you want to push and go, no, we can really do this. Trust me.
Yeah, you got to believe in the project. And as last week I said, don't just do something because you think it can make you rich. Do it because you enjoy doing it. Because even when you're not getting rich from doing it, if you enjoy doing it, it will be easier to do. Okay. Yeah. And it gets tough. I mean, we got in some problems. I remember couldn't pay the IRS at one time, and I owed them a lot of money. I mean, you get in, these things happen. It's not always easy, but you learn to stick with it. And you had to borrow some stuff, some temporary loans. I used some credit cards. My goodness, paying rates of 25 or 26% wasn't easy.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I remember going to the Consumer Counseling Credit Bureau because we couldn't pay our bills, but we still stuck with it. And Sonia, I had all the opportunities to go back into corporate America. Because remember, I was a young black executive. People wanted me. I taught grad school of banking when I finished. When I went to my own business, I went across the world, taught for GE in Australia, India. I was a commodity. But the initial start was tough. And people would have hired me. I had people offer me jobs. I had one bank offered me a job, but it would move you to Atlanta. Come work. No. You don't understand. You don't understand. I am going to make this work. I am committed to this thing. It's not easy, but I believed in it. And the first time we did $100,000 in revenue in this business, I thought, oh my God, hey, it's great. And the second year, when things began to roll up, we did 700,000. I thought, my goodness. And then $1 million, and so on, and so on, and so on. I was pinching myself saying, this was really possible. But I had to see it before I did it. You have to see it. Somebody said when Disney World opened up, and someone said to Mrs. Disney, because Walt Disney was dead, I think, at the time, somebody said to Mrs. Disney, it's a pity your husband was not here to see it. She said, no, he saw it.
He saw it, yeah.
You heard the story, right?
Yeah.
So that's how entrepreneurs are. They see it before it happens, and they believe in it. So if you can build a kind of passion about something you want to do, then nothing, no lack of money or whatever will stop you. But you got to be passionate. You got to love what you do, and you got to be good at what you do.
So, the third challenge for businesses is capital. Mm-hmm. And so I'd like us to talk about some of the options that are available to people. You talked about it yourself that, you took some loans, you maxed out credit cards. Mm-hmm. But what would you advise people starting today? And for some people today, it's a little easier because, an online business, I mean, even when I think about where I came from, to do an online publication today is so much easier than to do like a traditional book where you had to worry about the printing and where it was going to be delivered and how it was going to be mailed and all of those things. So technology has reduced costs across the board, but there's still depending on the type of business that you're starting, capital is an important piece of that. Mm-hmm. And so what would be your recommendations, or let's talk about some of the things that people can consider in terms of funding their business.
Right. So let's say that you don't have enough money. And again, that's where the business plan comes in. The business plan should come into play that says how much money do I need to make it through my first year? I always do a year at a time. My first year of expenses, assuming that I have minimal income or maybe no income. I'm going to burn through my capital, right? So I'd say you need at least a year's worth of operational expense money available to run the business, not figuring a salary for you or, whatever, at least keeping the doors open, keeping the lights on, keeping the phones ringing, right? And then, so the money's out there, the easiest place to go to relatives, maybe you can convince one of your sisters or brothers to go under the mattress and pull some money out to lend you. Family is always a good source to get it. You could, if you believe in yourself, you could put a mortgage in your existing house, a second mortgage. That doesn't hurt if you can do it. So you have something you could offer as collateral, but then there are other things available. So, if people are listening to me, SBA, Small Business Association, a very good friend of mine works as one of the regional managers for the SBA. They lend money to entrepreneurs, especially people of color. There's all kinds of programs available. Small Business Association. The only caveat there is that you have to have good credit. And so let's talk about it for a second, because most people that lend you money or give you money are going to want to look at your credit score. So, you'd probably need a credit score somewhere north of 625, for example, to be attractive to some people. Banks are going to want a higher credit score, and most people, don't think it's important, but it's important. The money you get to borrow, the rate of return you pay, whoever you pay. A lot is driven by your credit score. So work on making sure your credit score, you pay your bills on time. If I could ever give an advice to anybody listening to me, pay your bills on time. Because if your credit score goes south, it makes life, even as an entrepreneur, extremely difficult. And then so SBA will want you to guarantee the loan that they give you. It's called a 7A program, but it's good. It's good. They Small Business Association. A lot of people don't know that most small businesses, most of the businesses in America are small businesses.
Right.
We got some surveys, black businesses. So it is. But then you can also crowdfunding. You've heard about that,
right.
that phenomenon,
right.
where you can do it online. You raise money from people you don't know,
right.
willing to put money into your business for a rate of return. Right? If you have an attractive product. What I would suggest that you do, though, let me just back up for a second. If you have a business that's unique or an idea that's unique, before you start seeking crowdfunding and microloans and putting your idea out there, I would suggest you get a good attorney who will help you if there's a patent to be had or trademark to be done. So because if it's an intellectual property, you need to preserve that first before you start exposing it to other people who could steal your idea. So once you do that, crowdfunding is a good source of getting money. Microloans, there's a lot of organizations that do microloans, especially in other countries like in Africa, $10,000 microloans being made to farmers and stuff. In America, microloans are somewhere around $50,000 or less. You can borrow that from companies that do that. Angel investors, people who just say, okay, I like you, I like your idea, I want to invest in your company. And you got to be careful because some investors will want a part of your company. And they're going to want, if it's not a loan, if it's an investment, they're going to want some kind of equities play. So you have to think to yourself, well, if I own 100% of the company, how much equity do I want to give up? For how much do I want to give up? Right? If you watch a Shark Tank, I watch a Shark Tank all the time, and there's always haggling over, I'll give you 10% of my business. That's why you need you need an attorney. And look, I know it sounds like a lot, but if you get an attorney around you and an accountant and somebody, there's all kind of retired, like Core, I think, has retired executives that can help you. You get other people who've done it before to advise you what to do. Like I'm doing. I like to mentor people in this space, just getting started. Because I've been there, done that. I know all the pitfalls. I've seen businesses fail. I've seen why they fail. I've seen successes. So I can kind of say to you, don't do that, don't do this. But you have to have someone you can bounce things off before you go diving into it. And then there are grants. There are grants available, depending on what kind of business it is. You could get these federal grants. Grants are monies you don't have to pay back. Crowdfunding and SBA loans and microloans and investors, you have to pay back or give them equity. Grants are free. So there are grants available for some types of businesses. I did research several years ago for the EPA, where they were looking for minority businesses that would manufacture environmentally friendly products. And they were giving grants to them to do that. So there's all kinds of stuff out there. And again, like you said earlier, the internet allows you to go and surf the space and find out what's available.
And research these places, and I guess the thing with grants is it's learning how to write the proposal. So going back to what your recommendation is about is having a strong business plan. It's like for whatever you're going to be seeking, you're going to have, even if you do watch Shark Tank, people have to get up and present their idea effectively before any of the sharks are interested in investing. So that's the point. When you also made another point that I don't want us to gloss over is, when you think about all of these other people that you may need to bring in, the attorney, an accountant, someone to help you with the business plan, in my head, I'm calculating more money. Like these are people that I'm going to have to pay that, I don't have any money right now. And now I've got to pay for all of these services. But you did talk about, finding mentors or finding organizations where there are people who would be willing to offer their services.
Yes, there are. And you can surf the internet. There are people out there. I know Core is one that offers mentoring retired executives who are no longer active in business, but don't mind giving themselves to helping people with good ideas. And it's something that I'm looking into doing because I really, especially in the black and brown community, I want to see more entrepreneurs, build wealth and build businesses. Yeah. So, and listen, part of the initial capital that you have will go to pay accountants.
All right.
Will go to pay attorneys because you have to do it right. You have to get a good business plan. Set up some kind of because an investor is not just going to look and say, hey, you look good, I'll give you some money. They want to see the business plan. They want to see the rate of return. They want to see how much sales you're going to do. They want to see how much income you're going to make and what your rate of return is. So they need something. It's not just, hey, I got a big good idea, I'll lend you $50,000. No, it's not the way it works. So you need the professionals, the accountants, to make sure you got a good business plan. The attorney comes later on when you begin to organize and incorporate or become an LLC or subchapter S corporation or C corporation or whatever you want to do and the name you want to use and whether or not you need to be, trademarked or whatever. That stuff comes later on. But the business plan initially, and it's not expensive. It's not that expensive. It depends on what you're trying to do. But there are resources available to assist you in getting that done.
After you have set these things up and say, so we talk about companies that are struggling, but for companies that are finding their way, like you said, after you finished your first year where you could see that things were moving and getting better, what should entrepreneurs be thinking about in terms of just creating a solid foundation? Because I'm sure it could be easy to be like, okay, things are going well. But now what? Like now what do I do in terms of making sure that I can stay in this position?
Right. So let me tell you what I've seen happen too often is people get successful and they immediately go on a spending binge and start spending everything they have. I've learned that I'm always looking for other opportunities, one, but secondly, I'm always making sure that I have enough reserves so that if things, remember now, all eyes look to me. So if things turn down, like in COVID with us, for example, we were able to maintain all our employees. We got some PPP money from the government, quite a few bucks, but we had enough of a reserve on hand to have been able to sustain the impact of COVID for 6 to 9 months without closing up our doors in some of the business segments. And because, for example, Don Clark and asset-based lending consultants and Don Clark Enterprises or intellectually run companies, they're not hard capital, they're not bricks and mortars, they're, we're able to survive without a lot of capital expenditures that we need to make. It's human capital, and if you have enough money to keep your payroll going, you can survive until someone calls you with an assignment to give you a job. So it's making sure you have a reserve in your business, making sure you plan ahead, make sure you have a budget from year to year, make sure you compare your actual numbers to the budget and to see whether or not, if you have not met your budget, why you haven't met it, and how do you cut the expenses to match your income, And some things that I see, and you asked me this earlier about people that don't do well, is that most people, you talk to an entrepreneur, he'll tell you, I sold $10,000 this month. And it's impressive. He says, well, that's a lot. You know what? My next question is, how much money did you make? And if they say, well, I lost $2,000, I go, because, Sonia, why do businesses exist? Why do you think the number one reason why businesses exist? To make money. So if you're not making any money, why are you doing it? I'm not talking about when you're not getting any business, but if business is coming in now and now you're still not making any money 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road, maybe you have to look at what you're doing and you need to make money. Because if you're not making any money, it is as much as you love it, you've got to look at your company vertically and horizontally and see what can I do to make money? Listen, I've said this all the time. I said it in the seminar I taught a couple of weeks ago. I'd rather sell $1,000 and make $100 than sell 40 million and lose $1 million. So I said, why? I said, why? Who wants to go through all the work? I said 40 million and losing $1 million when I could only sell 10,000, make 1,000, and I'm happy because businesses exist to make money. So you have to be careful, make sure that you're adjusting your overhead and your expenses as you go. You have to, when I do my financial planning, I start off a lot differently than most people do. I start off with how much money do I want to make? That makes sense? Mm-hmm. And then I say, well, how much do I have to do in income to get to this number? Because I want to make money. You want to make money, Sonia. That's what it's all about. If you're not making any money, I mean, you might love what you're doing, but it's not fun anymore. You can't pay your bills. So that's.
And you do you do your financial planning? Is that separate from your overall business as well? When we talk about strategic planning,
right?
Break up all the different aspects of your business and look at them that way.
Yes, and I have a budget for every business segment. And I look back and I look forward. I look at what we did last year, what we're going to do this year. A UPS store I'm buying, I already got the financial statements from the guy who owned it. I see where he is. He was doing like, $400,000. I say, I want to do $500,000 this year. And how do I get there? I'm thinking, how do I take the business from this level to that level? How do I increase my bottom line as I do that? So
I like the idea of saying, how much do I want to make starting out that way? But how do I even know what's a reasonable, like, how do you even begin to say, okay, well, this is a reasonable amount? Like, I'm running a business. I'd like to make $1 million in the first year.
Yeah.
But like, where do I go from, I'd like to make $1 million, but $500,000 seems reasonable, or $250,000 seems reasonable. Right. Just in terms of the thought process, like.
And that's where research comes into play. Research says that you're not the first person to do what you're doing. Somebody else is doing it. So go look at somebody else's business and see how they're doing it. We do that a lot. When I do underwriting for banks, we'll do what we call industry comparisons. If you're selling, refrigerators, what do most people make as a bottom line? Let's say there's a 5% bottom line retention. Like when I did my appliances business, I did a research. What were all the big, the brands marks, and all these people? What were they doing? I was a small entrepreneurial business. I had 14 stores, 250 employees. We sold $80 million a year in appliances. I wanted to see, and a lot of information is available. Let me see what these guys are making bottom line. And what I do is I take their income and I divided that by their revenue to see how much of their revenue as a percentage they're retaining. Then I'll say, okay, if that's available. That can be done. If they're doing it, I can do it, and maybe even better.
Or even you can do better. All
exactly, right. Because they have built-in overhead structures and legacy structures I don't have coming in. I don't have those things. I'm starting with a fresh, clean sheet of paper. So I can kind of make my own stuff, but I know you can make at least 5% bottom line. So you start there. Let's say, how can I do it better? How can I make a better wheel? How can I make this wheel spin better? And because I know you can make money with an average wheel. If I make it better, if I ramp up some efficiencies, how do I make more money? Because I start off with, I want to make money. How much can I make here? You're not the first person doing it. When I did my consultancy business, I looked at accounting firms. I look at other consulting things that people did and see what kind of revenues they were putting to the bottom line, income to the bottom line. I kind of said, well, okay, they could do that. I could do better. And so that's why I say when you start with your bottom line first, yes.
So when you are working with an accountant, and we would hear these stories a lot in the music industry, but I'm imagining that these things happen in regular businesses as well. How do you know that you're working with the right person, the right accountant? That's someone who is really going to help you grow your business, help you make really solid financial decisions, and that you're not left surprised at the end of the relationship that like things could have been done better.
Yeah, well, I would suggest that anyone you begin to use, they must come with references. In today's environment, people's references are important. And by the way, let's use social media has really been good and bad at this, of exposing people's issues out there for you to see. So if somebody's got a problem and you see it, don't run through a stop sign. And that's my children a lot. Do not run through stop signs and say something. Go do your research. See who they use. Talk to other people. Even an attorney. I never hire a professional without checking their references. Okay. And if they burn 6 people, you're the 7th person, guess what? You're the 7th burnee, if that's a proper term. They're going to burn you too. So always do your research and get recommendations from people from who to choose. Yes.
So when we talked to you last week, you said that you were interested in developing, building a family dynasty. Mm-hmm. And so what's the process from going from, struggling, right? Falling 3 months behind on your mortgage, not sure whether or not, well, you were sure, you didn't know when it was going to happen. Right. But going from 3 months behind in your mortgage, owing people money, maxing out your credit cards, and now seeing that, I can really build something that's going to be not only like sustainable for my family, but I can see wealth now for my grandchildren and even their children long after I'm gone. Like, what is some of because I think that a lot of times we're just so, and I see it in my neighborhood, and I speak to entrepreneurs all the time. We're such in survival mode. Right. It's, 1 minute you can have $10,000 in your account, and the next minute you can have $34 in your account. And it's that, trying to pay for school fees or trying to manage the families. Like, how do you really kind of carve out, I don't know if it's time or if it's part of the planning to know that, okay, this is where I am now, but this is the goal, and how do I take these steps to get there?
Right. So building wealth and leaving a legacy is a process, right? The first thing I did was, you have to do is you build a successful business that can support you and your family. But then you're going to have to put the building blocks in place. My kids all went to university, got trained, even though, I wanted to make sure that they got an outside education, because all they should see more than just me in business. They should see what the world looks like. And then you make sure they learn as much as you do. If they're interested in the business, if you can't go to work today, someone should be able to step in for you and make sure things run seamlessly. So training your family, if the family wants to participate, training them to as much as they should know the business. And then come up with things like build, like finding ways to retain profits for future things. Because again, as I said before, if you don't have any money, you can't continue to grow, and it's not fun anymore. So we are always finding ways to invest some of the money we make into other things. We're always looking to diversify our revenue stream to see what else can we do within the same space of business. Is there something else that we can do? Right now, all my kids, Dwight has his own business besides working for me. He's doing other things. Simone is doing other things. I mean, Don's doing other things. It's amazing how they're all looking that entrepreneurial thing is catching on. And what we've done is we've now set up a family trust and to an attorney, so that we'll put, my wife and I are getting older, we're going to retire one day, put all the assets in the company's stocks and everything we own into this trust, and say to the kids, you guys come in, work this business, build this for the family, and your kids can come work here later on if they're interested, or they could sell pieces of the business. They could sell one of the segments. I mean, there's more than one way to do things. I mean, we've considered selling a business segment to someone else and raising a bunch of money, or buying something else. We're always thinking of ways we're never standing still. And I'm 70 this year, and I'm still very active in doing what I'm doing. Looking for opportunities, always looking for the next. I'm a serial entrepreneur.
Yes, you are.
So always looking for the opportunity. But planning with the family, we sat down with the family, we talked about it. We got an attorney, we created a trust. All the assets we are in the trust. So when my wife and I leave the scene, we, hand it over, that the things like taxes and inheritance taxes are taken care of, because you got to plan these things out. Otherwise, half of your wealth goes to the government when you pass.
Right.
So many things. And we did that. We sat with an attorney and said, here's what we want to do. We had a will done up and all these, I had a will when I was in my 30s. My wife and I had wills when we were in our 30s. We're always thinking ahead. Because if you plan ahead and if you think outside the box becomes irrelevant.
Yeah, everything you're saying is so important, particularly for Black and Brown families, because we don't do a lot of planning around our financial future, I should say. Like we'll make sure that the bills are paid on time, but in terms of looking out just past us being here or being well enough to work, a lot of times we don't think that far out. What we also don't do as much as a community is, and we talked a little bit about this last week, is talk to our children about business, encourage them in the business. We don't really, we talk a lot about not forcing people to do certain things or allowing our kids to have the freedom. But, one of our guests that we had on several weeks ago, were these young guys who are real estate investors. Mm-hmm. And, they said that, they were competing against really young kids in the Hasidic community, kids who were like 21 years old, who were taking their bar mitzvah money.
Yes, ma'am.
And buying property. And like, they couldn't compete with these guys. And so they ended up, going into, they're in Pennsylvania, going to another city, another state, right. Another city. But it's because, these young guys were doing that because they're in the Jewish community. That's the stuff that they talk about money. They talk about wealth. They talk about, when you get money for your birthday, it's with the purpose of being able to invest or to purchase things of that are going to increase in value. So it's great that you do that. And I want us to emphasize that a little bit more, the importance of talking about that with my children. Like, I know I didn't do that with mine. I mean, have serious conversations about, investing financially. And sure. So it's important that we stress that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And a matter of fact, in the Jewish community, they teach your children not to be consumers, but to actually provide the material for consumption. Because if you're a consumer, you're spending money. If you're making it, you're earning money. If you're making what's being consumed, you're making money. And listen, so there are certainly, look, so I can only use my story, our story, my wife and I, as sort of a template. When our kids were born, and once I went into business, I wanted to make sure a couple things happened. Number one, my kids all had education without leaving college with a massive college debt. That stuff is like an albatross around people's neck. It'll kill you. What we did was we started saving monthly for all our 3 kids. Every month, my wife and I, for our business, we put some away. So by the time it was time to go to college, we saw Simone last week. Simone got a college degree completely paid for, 100%. She doesn't owe a dime in college. You know what kind of start that is? Then we also had some savings for them and said to them, and Simone told you last week, we said, you will not leave our house and rent a house. And we drilled it into them. Said, if you're going to struggle to pay somebody else's rent and you're paying the mortgage guy's mortgage, why don't you struggle to pay your own stuff? And you build wealth by owning stuff.
By owning.
Not renting stuff. And so.
Home ownership is the cornerstone of wealth building. Yeah.
Absolutely. And especially in the Black community, the Black and brown community. They got a lot of us living in places where we're paying these crazy rents to somebody else, and you live there for 10 years and you leave with nothing. You got to pay in the place when you leave. You're paying $3,000 a month in rent for 10 years. That's a lot of money. And you leave and you have to pay in the house that you lived in, and you take nothing with you. Doesn't make any sense. That's just me saying that. And I drill that at my kids. I'm like, no, you won't be a consumer that way. You won't be that way. You got to get your own place. And they all came out and bought their own houses with a little help from me. Because there was a way to get money and new home buyers incentives, and they all own their homes live in houses as good as mine. And not with daddy's money, with their own starting it. And we had something set aside for them, each one of them, to say, here's to help with your deposit. But go get your own house. So, you don't build wealth by renting and hiring. You build leasing. You build rent by owning stuff. We bought real estate. We bought some properties that were dormant. I said to them, for example, where my office is right now in Hollywood, I bought the building. I was paying when I first came in business, I was paying this guy $2,500 a month. That's $30,000 a year for 10 years. That's $300,000. I'm like, no, I'm going to buy a building. So what I do, I went out and bought a building. No, I pay myself rent.
Tell us a little bit about Mrs. Clark, because she works with you in the business, but she also has her own business, right? Yes.
Mrs. Clark is an entrepreneur. She's a serial entrepreneur like me. She was a nurse, and we decided that we're going to retire early because she couldn't see the kids. And, we're passing like two ships in the night. And, kids were being babysat out, and we had three kids, and it became tough. And I said, look, you're going to stay home. I'm going to make this work. And almost at the same time when I was starting the business. So it's a double whammy. But she's a support, it's good to have a good support system like she is. She was supportive. There are times when we spend nights staring at the ceiling, wondering what on earth are we doing? But she's good. She has her own business. She now owns a travel agency and does all these trips. And she doesn't have to do it, but she wants to do something, Right. Again, and one of my daughters work with her in that segment of the business. So she owns her own business. We do. Our tax return is this thick because we've got so many businesses to roll up into it. But she does her own stuff. She's good back to school, got her master's degree, and she's a phenomenal woman.
and so, we mentioned this earlier, and I think it's important to bring up the importance of having a partner that supports your interests. Because, as I said earlier, marriages have broken up and been destroyed over one person having a dream that the other one couldn't buy into or didn't want to continue buying into. Right. And so entrepreneurship can be a really tough journey for some people, because sometimes, if they love it that much, sometimes they're willing to let go of everything else that doesn't support it. And so you were really lucky to have a partner who has supported you the entire way.
So let me say this about vision casting, right? As an entrepreneur, you'll get a vision, but then you have to cast it and convince others in your circle that this is a venture worthwhile taking and elicit their support. So when I first made a decision to leave the bank, my wife goes, "You're going to do what?" And I said, "I'm going to leave the bank." That's it. I'm sort of looking back now, almost 40 years. I'm making $50,000 a year. That's a lot of money. I'm in my 30s, man. I am like, driving the BMW 535i. I'm cool, And she goes, I said, "I'm going to start my own business." She goes, "Okay, let's have a talk." We talked about it, and she believed in me anyway. But then I started casting a vision. I said, "Look, I create more time to spend with my kids, more time with you. I'm going to take some sacrifice, but I think I'm a commodity. I think I can make this work." And, when I left that job, and we had some money, a little bit of nest egg to start, and we're sealing and writing 400 letters. This is 40 years ago. Licking 400 stamps and 400 envelopes and mailing them out to all these bankers around the country. And nunca, not one person replied to us. So I was saying, wait a minute. But she believed in me. And, we stuck it together. It's not easy, but you need a support system around you if you're going to be successful. That's in a nutshell. She's got still the glue that keeps us together. A couple of things about entrepreneurship, Sonia. Do you know that U.S. small businesses, for example, employed 60 million people in 2017, with firms with fewer than 100 employees have the largest share of small business employment. It's not the big companies. It's the small companies. It's the beauty salon, the barbershop, the baker, the butcher, the candlestick maker. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but
but we drive the economy.
we drive the economy. I mean, it's a guy who owns a grocery store, only buys another one. There's opportunities there. You don't start big, you start small. It's always good to start small. You can manage it. You can see it, pay attention to it. I wouldn't be juggling too many things at the same time. You got to get good at it. Get one started first. That can become your main revenue driver. Keep your eye on the ball. You'll know when to hire. When some people, as soon as they get started, want to hire 10 people. Well, no, you can work more than I do. Work for 3 people when I just started, right? Because I had to save some resources. So you got to start and work at it, and and be consistent, as we talked about earlier, and you can be successful. It's not that hard. Just, and unlike when I started this 40 years ago or 36 years ago, whatever it was, and I didn't have the support structure, there's so many resources out there.
Yeah.
And so many things available to people that, but I would recommend it if I had to do it all over again. If you ask me that question, I'd do it the same way I did it this time.
You did it the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'd be a little bit more cautious in some things I did, and we also had to get some breaks. We got a lot of breaks. People helped us, in certain things that we do, but did, and in certain ways, some too many to remember, but we were never successful by ourselves. I had a good support structure and my kids bought into it, and my wife and family, and helped me. Black-owned businesses employ. In 2017, there's 124,000 Black firms in the country. There's some statistics I did, and they employ 1,208,000 people. Again, and there should be more.
And there should be more.
There should be more. There should be more. They said receipts generated by Black-owned employer businesses during 2017 was $127.9 billion. Not hardly enough. And I just saw the study that came out the other day where it said that even Black women are making so much less money working in the corporate America. A lot of these Black women can start their own businesses. There's something they can do.
Yeah. And what's interesting with women or people of color in corporate America is they do their job so well. Like they have such expertise that, if they were to start their business, I think they'd be way ahead of so many other people because they have such good training, whether it's academic training and then the hands-on training that they're doing for these major corporations. And in fact, a lot of the folks who do start their businesses, started out of frustration because they keep, hitting those ceilings at the job.
And I tried to convince, I saw one young lady, she was a nurse and she was working, in Florida, nursing is a big business. I'm like, why are you working for somebody? Why don't you start your own business and collaborate with 3 or 4 nurses? You got to form your own corporation, get your own insurance. You know what you're doing. It's your talent they're using.
Yeah.
They started and they're making a lot of money and expanding as we speak.
Wow.
It wasn't bricks and mortars. It wasn't, borrowing them $100 million. It was something they're already doing.
Right.
Just monetize your skills and make it work for you. What is it that you can do? What can you do? And who's going to use your products, your services, and can you make it work? Yes. You got to start somewhere. So, it is taking that giant first step. The first step you mentioned earlier, getting past that fear about losing your job and losing your salary and saying, look, I'm willing to take a hit. Maybe I don't get a salary for 3 or 4 months, but in the end of the day, I'm going to own my own business and create my own wealth space.
Okay. It can be done, and it can be done in a really successful way.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Don, for sharing so much of your wisdom and so much of your time. We look forward to hearing about the success of the UPS stores. We know they're going to be a great success. And any other future businesses that you are, because we know you're not stopping. We know that there are many more to come. And so we look forward to hearing about them all.
Well, I'm looking forward also to hearing the Sonia Alleyne story. I am fascinated by you. I remember when I first met you at Black Enterprise Magazine, and I'm really impressed with what you've done. And my wife and I was talking to her about you and impressed at the things you've done. And really, really, happy for you. And I hope this works for you. And I'll come back whenever you want me back. Anything I can do to help you make it more successful.
Thank you. I'm here with a great team, and so I feel really fortunate. And yes, I will keep you abreast of everything that we're doing.
Please.
Thank you.
Please do.
Business First is hosted and produced by Sonia Alleyne. Associate producer, Lauren Turner. Edited by Ken Johnson. Executive producers, Omar Thompson, Andrew Kalb, and Ken Johnson. Find the Business First podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcasts. The Business First podcast is a Mean Old Lion Media and Say It Loud Network production.